Welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where each week we enter the world of a classic film, explore its ideas, the filmmaking, its history, and the influence it has on us today. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Roca. I'm an actor and voiceover artist and host and co-host of podcasts and shows around town here in Los Angeles. This week we've made one of my favorite choices.
It was weird going back to this one. It was. I hadn't watched it in a while. We're talking about Quentin Tarantino's first film, Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah. What you could say, you could probably describe this as one of the original films that sparked the independent film movement of the 90s.
I think this is it.
Yeah?
I think this is the number of those films.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about sex, lies, and videotape, and there's public access. There's all these other.
Oh, yes.
There's this one, to me, this is the number one.
Yeah.
You know, El Mariachi, of course, comes out right at the same time.
Rodriguez, yeah.
And really, of all these guys, man, Quentin Tarantino has continued to be Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, you could argue that he is the only one that has really progressed and advanced as a filmmaker to where he is almost better each film that he makes. You know, he engenders a certain kind of appreciation from people, because of every film that has subsequently been made by him has a certain kind of maturity every time. You know?
Well, and we had this discussion when we talked about Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Is Steven Spielberg an auteur? And maybe that's up for debate.
Right.
With Quentin Tarantino, it is not.
No, you're watching a Quentin Tarantino film.
Yeah, he's going to make exactly the film that he wants to make.
Yeah. And
it is nothing that anybody else is going to make.
Yeah.
He is who he is.
He has an amazing gift of skirting the line between homage and plagiarism. But he does such a great job with the homages that you accept it. Like all the 70s stuff, all the things that he's influenced by when he was a video clerk, when he was growing up watching movies, I tend to connect with him a lot because a lot of that is what influenced me as I was watching films growing up. And so I savor his films so much because you can see the influences all over it. If you've had the same kind of upbringing, you can see his influences, and that's fun to discover.
That's absolutely right. And it's interesting, different generations of filmmakers come to it in different ways.
Yeah.
So, you have the early silent filmmakers. Well, they're just trying to figure out what this is. Mm-hmm. And by the time you get to Quentin Tarantino, you've had several generations of film fans become filmmakers. So you have Truffaut in the French New Wave, and they are really, Truffaut's a film critic.
Yeah.
And before he's a filmmaker, he's going around and interviewing some of the great filmmakers, Hitchcock and Ford, and Howard Hawks and all those guys, and then takes all that in and becomes the filmmaker that he becomes. Right. And then in the U.S., you have people inspired by the French New Wave, like Peter Bogdanovich and Martin Scorsese, who are huge, again, film fans. Yeah. Bogdanovich also is a critic who begins his career by talking to filmmakers. Yeah. And now you get to Quentin Tarantino. It's kind of the ultimate level of he worked in a video store.
Yeah.
That's he wasn't the film critic. Right. He wasn't the French New Wave. He was a guy who sat all day, every day, watching movies.
Yeah. And at the time, we're having the beginnings of commentary tracks. We're having the beginnings and special features where they have a behind the scenes featurettes that people are clamoring for, and so you're able to get. It's almost like what Matt Damon does. His line in Good Will Hunting when he's like, "I was able to get the education that you paid like $100,000 for $2.20 of late fees at the library." Right. You can make that connection here with him as a filmmaker. He was able to watch all kinds of film and understand it and understand how to create these films, how to make these films, and what made them work.
Well, and let's talk about, I hadn't thought about this exactly, but what you say is exactly right on the money. Because for those of you who are younger, you don't remember the era before VHS.
Yes.
Is that for, like, my son, in his world, he's almost 5 years old. Yeah. And in his world, if he wants to see something or hear something, he just pushes a button. Yeah. And all things are available to him at all times. Right. When Martin Scorsese wanted to saw Citizen Kane for the first time, it was because it was playing at a theater. Yeah. And when it wasn't playing at a theater, you couldn't see it. Right. If you wanted to see that old Hitchcock film or you wanted to see that Howard Hawks film, you couldn't see it. Yeah. Then suddenly in the late 70s, early 80s, They're these videotapes.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't know about you, but a day for me when I was high school or college was I'm going to rent 4 movies.
Oh, yeah.
And that's my day.
Yeah.
And no one, that could never have happened before. Like when I saw Wizard of Oz, you saw it once a year because that's when it was on TV. And now suddenly you get Quentin Tarantino's Kid in a Candy Shop.
Right.
And he can go over and over and dig deep in all these films. And that's where he gets his education.
Plus, you have Premiere, you have Total Film, you have all these magazines that are coming out that are breaking. That's how I started, and reading all that kind of stuff. Because I'm at age, I think I'm around the same age as Tarantino. All the stuff that he was doing. If you're a lover of film, there were at that time. It was the beginning of information that could flow to you as a regular person. Right. You didn't have to go to college. You didn't have to go to a film school. You could get this information, and if you could understand it and apply it and read it and put it into practice, who knows what it could lead to. And that's why I always enjoy his beginnings, because he was just like a lot of us. We just discover, because the film lovers are a certain subculture nerd. Like
they're wonderful group of sad, lonely people.
That's right. Oh, yeah. Okay, I accept that. I mean, I'm a bit more social, but I know growing up for me, film was everything, because my parents worked a lot. They were almost always out of the house. I had a very small group of friends. I was nerdy about certain things, and certainly film was one of them. And I got to what you're talking about. Like, you could only watch a film at times. It would be on like the local station, Channel 20 in DC, or Channel 5, Metro Media 5 is what it was called back then. So I got to see a lot of the older films that way, or on PBS. They would show them occasionally, musicals or what have you, or Shakespeare stuff. And then you'd watch like the Japanese, the martial arts films rather. Right. And so those were the things that you could occasionally watch, along with some terrible 70s films like Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, or things like that, And so, your education.
How often do you think Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry gets mentioned today?
I don't know how many times Peter Fonda gets interviewed on a podcast, maybe.
I think it's really interesting too, because if you go to, this might seem like a strange thing to discuss, but the Ernest Hemingway philosophy on how to be a writer was you had to go out and live life. You got to go fight a bull and be in a boxing match and drive a fast car and ride a horse and climb a mountain. And then you're going to take those experiences, those real life experiences, and then you're going to go write your book.
Right.
That's not what Quentin Tarantino does. No. Quentin Tarantino is, my life experiences are watching movies. Yeah. And when you watch a Tarantino movie, you never forget the fact that you are watching a movie. Yes. There's some movies where it's like, I'm in this world. Yeah. And in Tarantino, it's like, no. We're constantly referencing film. Mm-hmm. This is a film about film. Yeah. And so even though, and it's interesting because you can be 100% emotionally involved, completely invested in the characters, and yet at the same time aware of a filmmaker coming in. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, we've been talking around this movie. Yes. So first of all, it came out in 92?
92, I think, 92.
For those of you who haven't seen it, I highly recommend you stop listening to us and you go watch Reservoir Dogs. It's well worth your time. And then all the stuff we're going to say will make more sense, and you don't have to worry about the fact that we are going to spoil every single surprise in the film.
Absolutely.
So first of all, Reservoir Dogs is a crime movie. Yes. It's about a bunch of criminals who are using aliases, so they're only known as Mr. White, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Orange, Mr. Pink, Mr. Blue, and Mr. Brown. Yeah. And they're going to go off and commit a jewel heist. But in classic Quentin Tarantino style, the movie does not exist in a chronological order. Nope. We see right before the heist, and then we see that things have gone horribly, horribly wrong. Mr. Orange, played by Tim Roth, by the way, this is an unbelievably great ensemble cast. Absolutely. Has been shot in the belly. Harvey Keitel's trying to save him. We don't know what went wrong in the jewel heist. They end up back at the safe house, and one by one people start coming in. Steve Buscemi is Mr. Pink. Yes. Michael Madsen is Mr. Blonde. And the question is, who ratted us out? Who's the cop? Right. How are we going to get help for Mr. Orange, who's going to die, Tim Roth, and who's the bad guy? What happened to the diamonds? And we're in this boiler room of tension. Mm-hmm.
I cannot definitely say that about anybody else because I don't definitely know. For all I know, you're the rat.
For all I know, you're the fucking rat.
All right, now you're using your fucking head. I mean, for all we know, he's the rat.
Hey, that kid in there is dying from a fucking bullet I saw him take. So don't you be calling him a rat.
Look, I'm right, okay? Somebody's a fucking rat.
all brought together by this one main older criminal,
the big bad guy.
Yeah, the big bad, played by Lawrence Tierney, and his son, played by Chris Penn, nice guy Eddie. And those are the people that show up. I mean, they all show up at the end of the film and through the film at the safe house, and then through flashback we get to discover everyone's story.
Right, how everyone got there, and then at the very end you actually see kind of what happened in the jewel heist.
Yes,
and it was interesting. So one of the things Tarantino says in the commentary track, which is an interesting one to listen to, is he says these are not flashbacks. And here's what his definition is.
Fascinating.
And I had never heard this before.
Okay.
Is that what he says a flashback is? A flashback is when a character is thinking about their past and we see their past.
Yeah, okay.
So you walk into you're in your old hometown and you go to this place where you as a little kid got in a fight with another little kid, and then we cut to you as a little kid having the fight with another little kid.
Right.
That is me as a character flashing back to an event.
Right.
What he is saying that this film is that it is a film told in a non-sequential order. So it's not that Mr. White or Mr. Orange are thinking about those events in the moments that we are seeing them.
Yeah.
It's just that this is the order he chose to tell his film.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I like that, and it totally works. He's completely right on a technical and definition level. He's completely right. By the way, I miss the 70s TV flashbacks where the screen would get all wavy. Yeah.
Yeah, the classic Wayne's World, that is a flashback.
Those were the best flashbacks.
Yeah. And it's funny because as a linear thinker,
yeah,
I don't know how you come up with this, or later in Pulp Fiction, this is the order I'm going to tell my story.
Yeah.
It's really, and to go into the first of all, we start in the opening scene in this film. We're in a diner. We're having some breakfast. It starts with a monologue from the fine actor Quentin Tarantino.
Yes.
About Madonna's song "Like a Virgin."
Yeah.
And instantly, and we don't know what's going on. We don't know who these people are. Yeah. And instantly, you're brought into that amazing world of Quentin Tarantino dialogue.
Yeah.
What the fuck was I talking about? So True Blue was about a guy, sensitive girl that meets a nice guy, but Like a Virgin was a metaphor for big dicks. Okay, let me tell you what Like a Virgin's about. It's all about this Coos, who's a regular fuck machine. I'm talking morning, day, night, afternoon. Dick, 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 dick.
How many dicks is that?
A lot.
Which becomes his signature throughout every film that he's in. It is the dialogue scenes that you wait for, that you savor and enjoy. His filmmaking is great. You love his films, but it is the dialogue is the foundation with which he creates everything that happens within the film. Because I think without the dialogue, you don't have your appreciation of the characters and your savoring. This is my opinion. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's hard to tell whether or not he didn't have the visual chops yet, that they were still growing,
right?
Or he just didn't have the budget to display the visual chops there.
Yeah.
But there's no question in my mind that from Reservoir Dogs, he's got the dialogue chops.
Yeah. Yep.
And I put him up with the great wordsmiths. I put him up there with Sorkin. I put him up there with David Mamet. I don't know if I put him up with Paddy Chayefsky. I don't know. Yeah, Paddy Chayefsky too.
Yeah.
Like these are the great writers of dialogue on film, and his is, in fact, my guess is if there was magical way to get some audio from a Quentin Tarantino movie that had never existed, you would instantly recognize that you're listening to Quentin Tarantino words.
Oh, absolutely. And to me, it's those are the things that persevere when I go to see any of those of his movies. In every film, there is one scene that the dialogue is masterful. The exchange, the build, the tension, throughout the dialogue, throughout the scene is so memorable. That's what I take from it. It may just be because I'm an actor and that's what I enjoy to watch, but I'm also an avid film watcher. So I like the cutting of the ears scene doesn't stick out for me the way the scene does between Tim Roth and his I forget the black gentleman's name who plays
the other cop.
Yeah, the other cop.
Undercover cop.
Right. When they go through him, like coaching him through the dialogue and the exchange they have about that is great. That sticks with me. The scene in the car when they first pick up Tim Roth with Steve Buscemi, Harvey Keitel, and Michael Madsen, all four of them, and they're having Nice Guy Eddie rather, having an exchange, all four of them. It's a very brilliant exchange that is relatable, understandable. Every dude who has a few guys, they get in a car, they have some random conversation about some shit that helps them appreciate their friendship and their connections. And those are the things that stick out for me always in a Tarantino film is those scenes.
Well, this is maybe going a little bit out of order, and I was debating whether or not to bring up So there's a scene in the car where
Yeah.
Tim Roth gets in the car.
Yes.
And they have a conversation.
Yeah.
And this conversation, watching it this time,
Yeah.
made me very uncomfortable.
Well, because it's a bit racist.
It's really racist.
Yes.
And it's an interesting thing. This scene is a lot of usage of the N-word.
Yeah.
And with this scene, it's you kind of go, wow, the world sort of changed. I don't know that maybe Quentin Tarantino would still do this scene today.
He does.
Yeah, I guess.
He does still use the N-word, and this is a thing that Spike Lee has had an issue with him throughout his entire career because he thinks it's unfair that he gets to use it. But Tarantino's complaint or counter is always, these are how my characters talk. I'm not saying it's right because most of my characters are criminals and bad people using these words. So they're not redeemable people using these words most of the time, or probably all the time. If I don't have right now every single character in my head that he's ever written in a film will use the N-word, but I would imagine 95 to 99% of the time they're not redeemable people. You know, they may be interesting, they're fun to watch, they're who you remember from films, but you don't use the N-word because they use it in the film. And I think it's a valid counter. But on the same side, I also feel that Spike Lee has a valid point to make because he is a black filmmaker. That word means a lot to him in his culture. He uses it very craftily when he puts it in his films. He's trying to make a point of that word being used in a certain scene in a certain way for effect. And I think with Tarantino, it's more about showcasing how these guys just naturally talk.
Well, and this goes into the issue of at what point is this is just a character in a film,
Yeah.
and at what point is this what the film is or what the filmmaker is,
Right.
And there are times where you're watching a movie and you go, oh, I think I just saw the filmmaker there in a way.
Yeah.
An example for me is in Braveheart, the treatment of the gay guy. It's like part of the reason that, and I love Braveheart, but part of the reason that scene rings so poorly is that it's done for a joke.
Yes.
In a way.
Yeah.
And that sort of makes me go, oh, the film is being homophobic now.
Right.
It's not that dad is being a jerk.
Right.
That I accept. But when the film is being a jerk,
Yeah.
and I don't think Quentin Tarantino necessarily crosses that line, but he certainly, and this is something you see, he's fairly fearless.
Yes.
He's happy to get into whatever it is.
Right.
He doesn't have that censor that says, oh, what are people going to think of this?
Yeah.
What are they going to think of me? He's like, this is the movie I'm making.
Yeah, and even in this movie, he fought against Weinstein for the ear cutting scene. Like he fought for that scene because Weinstein wanted to cut it. He said people won't get it. It'll drive people away from the film. It'll make them not want to see the film. And Quentin Tarantino would not budge on it because he's like, if you're going to make my film, this is the film I want to make. This has to be in the film. And so these are these things that he's had since the beginning for whatever reason, force of personality, incredible knowledge of film, just the way that he is as a person, that people have been willing to let him do his thing his way. You know, he's very adamant against product placement. You never see any product placement in his films. This is what he's been able to carve out as a filmmaker.
Well, and this is why we certainly call him an auteur.
Yes.
It's funny. I realize in these podcasts that I'm often presented with a fork in the road where you've said two things or more that I really want to talk about. And then it's sort of, what's the decision of which one?
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. So for now, we definitely have to talk about the cutting the ear scene.
Yes.
But I want to put that aside for the moment. We're going to come back
Absolutely.
to it. What I'd like to talk about is what starts his ability to be this kind of auteur, to say no. And the thing that really starts it is that he sells a screenplay.
Yes.
So he sells True Romance right before this
For $50,000.
for $50,000.
Yep.
And that $50,000, I mean, Quentin Tarantino's a guy who takes the bus. He doesn't have a car at this point. His buddy is Lawrence Bender, who's the producer of this film.
Yep.
They are hand to mouth. They don't have a lot of money. Suddenly $50,000 comes in, and he's got a little bit of breathing room because the script goes out, Reservoir Dogs goes out. It's an immediate sensation. People are really interested in this movie, and there's an offer from, I think it's Gladstone, who ends up being a producer on the film.
Yeah.
He wants to direct the movie.
Yeah.
And Quentin says, if you had talked to me 2 weeks earlier, I would have said, go ahead and direct my movie. But because he sold the script for True Romance, he had enough money in his pocket that he said, no, I'm going to direct it.
Yep.
And that's really the key, is he had enough safety to be free to take control of it. They make the movie for $900,000. It's a low budget, shoot it on a very short production schedule. And it's interesting because that everyone sort of trusts Quentin.
Yeah.
You know, as a first-time director with some very difficult material, they go, yeah, you got it.
Well, Keitel was the key.
He's the key.
Because if he hadn't agreed to do the film and come in as a co-producer, the film isn't anywhere because Tarantino's going to shoot it himself with him as the lead, Bender in one of the parts.
Yeah, Tarantino wants to play Mr. Pink.
Yeah, he wanted to play Mr. Pink, right? Yeah. And so that's why Mr. Pink gets a lot of awesome dialogue in the film, I imagine. And so Keitel comes in, and this is the thing, and it's fascinating because you read this stuff about him, and he pitched both Reservoir Dogs and True Romance to Tony Scott, and Tony Scott wanted to do Reservoir.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but Quentin said, no, I'm directing Reservoir. I'm pitching you. I'm showing these two scripts so you understand that I'm a good writer, and I want you to do one of these films, but I want you to do True Romance. And so he did True Romance, which I saw the other night at midnight at the New Beverly.
Seen it in forever.
Oh, I love that film so much. And
I think Tony Scott, by the way, is one of our great underrated directors.
I was having a discussion with somebody about this the other day, and they're like, if he wasn't Ridley Scott's brother, people would talk about him with more reverence. Okay. And I agree. Absolutely.
Well, because it's the difference. Tony Scott's the craftsman.
Yes.
You know, and by the way, the difference between craft and art is always an interesting one, and I just heard a great definition of what is the difference, and it comes from Ed Catmull, which is the CEO of Pixar, in his new book Creativity Inc., which I'm telling you, anyone interested in filmmaking or the creative process, one of the best books I've ever read. Okay. And what he says, if I can quote it right, I'll try, is craft. Oh no, I'm going to look it up.
Okay,
it's craft is how we do what. I can't remember it.
Okay.
Well, here's what we're going to do.
Okay.
I'm going to make a cut in this podcast so I can come back and I will come in and I'll tell you what the quote is.
Okay.
But let's keep talking. We'll go back to it later.
Okay.
So he goes and makes this film.
Yep.
He brings in this unbelievable cast of actors.
Yeah.
Tim Roth wants to do it. Quentin Tarantino tells a great story about Tim Roth refusing to read.
He wouldn't read for it.
Yeah. And this is a key thing in Hollywood. This is how you know you have a certain level of success. Yes. At a lower level, you have to read for your part. Yeah. And when you get a certain amount of cachet, you can say, I'm offer only. Yeah. Offer only means you offer me the money to do the part, but I'm not going to audition.
Yeah.
And the only way that he ended up auditioning, meets with Harvey Keitel. Harvey Keitel's like, come on, man, you got to read. He's like, nope. Then Tarantino and Tim Roth go out drinking. They drink all night. Yeah. And at the drunken night back at Tim Roth's place, finally he reads for the part.
But this fits the Tim Roth mystique. You hear this from a number of people, at least I have, who've worked with him on sets. Or he can be quite a prickly guy. He can be quite very stubborn and adamant about what he believes about himself and his talent, and what he's willing to do and not do. You know, and that's what's so great about the film. I think is once again. I think the stories of making these classic films are just as amazing and fascinating as the actual film that you see. The fact that he was able, as a first-time director, to get this kind of talent into a film. Michael Madsen, Tom Sizemore had read for that part that Michael Madsen had read. They had gone out to a number of people to play the Lawrence Bender part, including who he ended up using, Robert Forster in Jackie Brown. They wanted Robert Forster
Lawrence
had read for it. Yeah, Lawrence Tierney. Yeah. Did I say something else? Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Lawrence. I was thinking of producer, right? Lawrence Tierney. They went out to Robert Forster first. They were in a David Duchovny auditioned for a part. A number of people were looked at or auditioned or came in, but I think what shook out was the perfect cast for this kind of film. Michael Madsen is so menacing, and it's ironic because he's in Aversion to Violence, but he's tied to one of the most iconic violent scenes in any film ever made. You have Chris Penn coming off of what he's done, in the shadow of his brother Sean. You have a number of with Tim Roth. You have with Steve Buscemi, who's still up and coming at this time, and Keitel. But Keitel he's
the linchpin.
Yeah, he's the linchpin.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, and this is great scripts elevate actors, and great directors elevate actors, and Chris Penn is this guy who. He's been good in some stuff.
Sure, serviceable actor.
And particularly, of course, in Best of the Best with Eric, a movie I watched over and over again in the late 80s.
I would argue Footloose, but okay.
Yes, of course, Footloose. But Footloose has dancing and Best of the Best has people doing martial arts scenes. So you know which one I'm going to be drawn to.
Right.
But in this movie, yes. Chris Penn's performance is really interesting.
Yes.
It's emotional and it's sort of real and it's this mix of kind of competence.
Yeah.
The scene where Michael Madsen, as we said, this movie is played out in non-sequential order.
Yes.
Let's talk about this actually before I get to the Michael Madsen
Sure.
scene. Is that we start with this very funny scene in the diner.
Awesome.
With the like a virgin speech,
Yes.
and then into Steve Buscemi's character, Mr. Pink, not tipping.
Let me just get this straight. You don't ever tip, huh?
I don't tip because society says I have to. All right, I mean, I'll tip if somebody really deserves a tip. If they really put forth the effort, I'll give them something extra. But I mean, this tipping automatically, it's for the birds.
Hey, this girl was nice.
She was okay. I mean, she wasn't anything special.
What's special? Take you in the back and suck your dick?
I'd go over 12% for that.
Hey, look, I ordered coffee, right? Now, we've been here a long fucking time. She's only filled my cup 3 times. I mean, when I order coffee, I want it filled 6 times.
6 times? Well, you know, what if she's too fucking busy?
Words too fucking busy shouldn't be in a waitress's vocabulary.
Excuse me, Mr. Pink, but the last fucking thing you need is another cup of coffee.
Jesus Christ, I mean, these ladies aren't starving to death. They make minimum wage. And I used to work minimum wage, and when I did, I wasn't lucky enough to have a job that society deemed tip-worthy.
You don't have any idea what you're talking about. These people bust their ass. This is a hard job.
So is working at McDonald's, but you don't feel the need to tip them, do you? Well, why not? They're serving you food. But no, society says, don't tip these guys over here, but tip these guys over here. That's bullshit.
Waitressing is the #1 occupation for female non-college graduates in this country. It's the one job basically any woman can get and make a living on. The reason is because of their tips.
Fuck all that.
And this is one of Quentin Tarantino's key things, is that bad guys don't talk about being bad guys.
Yeah.
They don't talk about their jewel heists and their crimes and stuff like that. They're just people
Yeah.
who are having conversations. And so now we have this conversation about tipping, which has nothing to do with anything in the film,
Yeah.
except that it reveals who each of these characters are.
Right.
So by the end of that scene, we know these guys. And then they march off in this great stepped slow motion shot where they shot it at, I think, at 12 frames, and then they sped it up, and so that it gives this weird kind of jarring shot that's super cool.
It's been imitated a
All over
thousand
the
times.
place.
Yeah.
And then what do we cut to? We think, we're going to go do the job. Now we're
Yeah.
going to do whatever they're going to do. But that's not where we cut to.
Right.
We cut to Tim Roth in the backseat, blood everywhere, screaming in pain with Harvey Keitel trying to comfort him in this unbelievably jarring and brutal and emotional scene. And this is something we'll see from Quentin Tarantino forever, is the mix of light comedy, good dialogue, cut right into in-your-face, harsh, violent, 120% emotion.
Yeah, and it's so great because of the setup.
Yeah.
It's a great dialogue back and forth, and ironically, which I don't know if Tarantino's ever admitted that he did this on purpose, but the person who sells out Mr. Pink is Mr. Orange, who ends up being the rat in the whole mix. So he sells out Mr. Pink for not tipping when Lawrence Tierney asks who didn't put in a buck.
Never occurred to me.
Yes, and
That's great.
It's so interesting, these little things, and also apparently when you see the movie, Chris Penn, when he is being told about what's happening, when he's on the phone driving over, an orange balloon goes by him in the passenger window. Oh. So and Tarantino said that was an accident. It was not on purpose.
Right.
But these are the happy accidents that you see in films that really take films to other level, almost mythical levels of what was going on. You know.
Well, when shit's going right, it goes right.
It goes right. That's exactly right.
And one of the hallmarks of filmmaking is make the most of your obstacles.
Yes.
And take advantage of things when they go right, because filmmaking, particularly independent filmmaking, having made an independent film, you have no safety net.
Yeah.
If Steven Spielberg didn't get what he wanted to get, well, we're just going to try it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if you're an independent film, you must get it.
Yeah.
And so if something goes wrong, you have to adapt immediately and hopefully turn it into a positive.
Yeah.
So we're with Tim Roth in the back of this car. We get to the hideout. Mr. Pink, Steve Buscemi, comes in, says we've got a rat. I've hid the jewels. And now we're in this boiler room of tension.
Yeah.
And with each of this, we get I'm not going to call them flashbacks, but little scenes of how we got there.
Yes.
A little kind of back scene where Harvey Keitel talking to Lawrence Tierney or of Michael Madsen showing up. And you see that Michael Madsen has this great relationship with Nice Guy Eddie and with the boss. And we're getting these little glimpses, but we don't know who the cop is.
No. Until the Tim Roth scene when he has the conversation with the guy.
Yeah, spoiler alert, Tim Roth's the cop.
Yeah. I mean,
But I always forget how
Yeah.
late in the movie
Yeah,
we are
yeah.
before we see that. We're an hour into the film. And what's funny is, because in my brain, from when I first watched it,
Yeah.
to me, Tim Roth is the central character because he's the cop. And because his flashback is the longest, which I really want to talk about, the commode story, because it's
God.
unbelievable.
So great.
So in my brain, he becomes really central. But in fact, they all are really equal.
I was going to say that, yeah, as you were saying this now, it occurs to me, if you could choose any one of those five guys and follow their story through the film and think they are the central person in the film. They are the protagonist in the film.
Like, including the cop that gets tortured.
Yes, Kirk Baltz, yeah.
Who does a great performance.
Really does.
And they're all, because they all have their own storyline. They all have their own journey. They all have an emotional arc.
Yeah.
They're all really unique and interesting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the commode story. because
Sure.
This to me is filmmaking off the charts.
Okay.
So what this is that in order to now we're an hour into the movie and we reveal that in fact Tim Roth is the undercover cop.
Right.
And in this scene, his buddy, his superior, is telling him, in order to be an undercover cop, you have to make things real. And
Yeah.
the example of this is you're going to tell this joke, and this joke is the commode story.
Yeah.
Something that happened to him. And so then we see Tim Roth, and the challenge that he's given is you must make everything that's in this bathroom real.
Yeah.
You have to know if there's a blow dryer. You have to know what kind of soap there is. You have to know if it's clean. You have to know if it's dirty, what it smells like. You have to feel like it has really happened to you
Yeah.
because that's how you got to tell the story. It is, in fact, and they talk about this in the commentary track, it is Shakespeare's Hamlet's speech to the players.
Yes.
This is what acting is. He's actually in a film telling a character in the film what acting is.
So great.
And then what we do is we watch Tim Roth step by step go from being a terrible performer of this to being really good.
Yeah.
And this is one thing, and for the people who are listening to this who are filmmakers, you can see in this sequence why location is so important. Because you could have had the conversation with this cop in an apartment, in a restaurant, but instead they put it on a rooftop.
Right.
They put it in a fantastic, interesting location. Why? Because it's interesting. Then we see Tim Roth in his room, not doing very well. Then we cut to him in this other unbelievable location. There's a graffiti-covered wall. He's now on a stage with the other cop in the audience and now being an actor. And when you watch his performance, so when we first saw him doing it, he was bad.
Yeah.
And now when he's doing it, he's pretty good, but he's good in the way that an actor is doing a good performance.
Yeah.
It's not real to him yet.
Yeah.
And then we cut directly into him telling the story to the guys.
At a bar.
At a bar.
Yeah, late at night.
And we're now in a real world, and now he's doing it really, really well.
Yeah.
And Quentin Tarantino knows that I don't need to do anything to make my cut other than have my great dialogue take me over the edges between scenes, and that we will accept that we jump from here to here to here, and we've jumped from bad performance to medium performance to good performance. And then we do this unbelievably remarkable thing, I think, in film, which is we go from him telling the story to him in the story. And for me, this is fascinating because we have to remind ourselves this bathroom doesn't exist.
Yes.
He was never in this room. This is so in normal filmmaking, it would be a flashback, as we talked about before. I'm telling you a story about a thing, and then we cut to the thing.
Right.
Totally normal. But in that sense, that thing was real.
Yeah.
Here, this room is not real. And in fact, as we construct it, we see that all the details that he was supposed to come up with are here.
Yeah.
And then we do this thing, which is now the next level of crazy, I think, which is that we do this 360 camera shot, which is we hear Tim Roth telling the story. This is what we normally expect in a flashback, someone narrating their story. And then he starts telling the story in the bathroom while talking directly to the cops. Now, we've gone completely outside of reality. And it's become so real that he's placed himself really in this space. Yeah. Which, by the way, what they said is this wasn't planned.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So here's how this happened, is that Tarantino wanted to do this 360 camera shot, and he wanted it to go over the narration of him telling the story in the bar.
Yeah.
But in order to do this, again, it's a filmmaking thing, you got to know, well, how long does it take for that actor to say that bit of dialogue?
Right.
So they set up the track, and because they got to figure out what's the speed of the dolly move in the 360 move. Right. So they say, Tim, why don't you do that line? So he starts doing the line, and Tarantino's looking at it and goes, oh, shit. this is something.
Yeah.
Let's actually film him saying the line.
Oh, wow.
All my senses, blood in my veins, everything I have is screaming, take off, man. Just bail, just get the fuck out of there. Panic hits me like a bucket of water. First there's a shock of it, bam, right in the face. I'm just standing there drenched in panic, and all these sheriffs are looking at me, and they know, man, they can smell it. Sure as that fucking dog can. They can smell it on me.
Shut up. Hey, so anyway.
You know, and then the last thing to me that's really, and we then see revealed, how does the soap work? How does or not the soap, but the water,
right.
The blow dryer, which is brilliant again in that stepped up slow motion.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's interesting to me is we now hear within his story, a cop is telling a story. So now this cop never existed.
Right.
And the events that the cop is describing never existed.
Exactly.
And what's most interesting to me, how would you describe the way that cop tells that story? Is he a good storyteller or a bad storyteller?
He's an aggressive storyteller is how I would describe
It's a really
it.
weird way he tells
Yeah,
the story.
it's very aggressive.
And so that Tim Roth's character has made this commode story so real that he has invented a character for a cop telling a story that never happened in his story that never happened.
I said, hey,
man.
Fuckhead.
Yeah, it's really weird how he tells that story.
But it's important that, and I think this is important as you're telling this part of the story, like he creates an antagonistic cop that makes sense to those criminals.
Absolutely.
Because they hate cops.
And kind of an idiot.
Yeah, an idiot as well. Like, because they didn't, even with the dog sniff, even with the drug sniffing dogs, they tell the dogs to shut up when the dogs start barking at him because he's freaking out that they're smelling the drugs on him. And that's it. He turns the cops into these aggressive, macho idiots,
right?
And which plays to the audience he's telling it to, And I think what's great, just to make a real quick point, when he is in front of that graffiti wall, dude, that to me was so reminiscent of proscenium stages from Greek theater.
Absolutely.
And I thought that was so
what it is.
Fucking smart of him and brilliant of him to do that, because you're right. He is teaching you how to act in that small little scene. And everything he says that he has the black cop say is exactly what you hear in every acting class that you've ever been to. It's so true.
Well, and you have this movie that is essentially all about performances.
Yeah.
We have this cop, obviously he's performing.
Yeah.
But everybody else, they have a fake name.
Of course.
They have their identity.
Right.
I'm not letting you know who the real me is.
Right.
This is just who I am in the film. The other thing that's really interesting, and this shows just how big Tarantino's huevos are.
Yeah.
Which is that you've built all this tension up to this point, and this commode story happens right after the ear gets cut off. So we got to go back to the ear.
Yeah.
But you built unbelievably high tension. We reveal at that moment Tim Roth is the cop, and then rather than stay in the tension, where everything is coming to a climax, Tarantino chooses to cut away to a 20-minute bit of backstory.
Yeah,
that's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Because normally in classic story structure, you find out the stuff. And then you build the tension.
Yep.
And once you're in the tension, you don't stop. You keep going.
Yeah.
Tarantino goes, nope, that's not how I'm going to do it.
Right.
And it works great.
It does. In the editing, you've got to, and we should we should name the editor for the film, because she did.
Sally Menke.
Yeah, Sally Menke. She did 6 films of his, again, initially against her agent's advice to do the first film.
Never listen to your agent.
I guess, well, but that's the combo you find, just like with the Thelma Schoonmaker with Scorsese. If you find the right editor, you're set. You're set as a director who understands your vision, and will keep you from making mistakes with your movie for the most part, in terms of pacing, in terms of rhythm, and in terms of getting. So to me, the 20 minutes are brilliant, because we've had so much tension and insanity up to that 20 minutes. We need a break, and that break gives us a fuller understanding of everybody involved in the situation, so that when we come back to the glorious climax, we are ready to be ramped up again into it. Yeah.
Well, and just a note on the editor, because she's unbelievable and died very tragically.
Oh, I didn't know this. Oh,
yeah, she died. I think so. I haven't looked. I didn't look up the story well.
Okay.
But in Griffith Park, she was hiking and fell, and they found her body. Yeah, I think I think that's who this story happened to.
Where was she? Where do you hike in Griffith Park where you can fall and die?
Well, are you looking it up right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So while you look it up,
yes.
But I believe that the relationship between the director and an editor, I think, might be the most intimate relationship in film.
Yes.
Because yes, you're going to have a strong relationship with the writer, but the writer goes off to write and
Yes.
they come back.
Yes.
And yes, you have a very close relationship with the DP on the set. You're kind of, you got your hips, you're attached to the hips,
Yeah.
but the shoot is a relatively small amount of time. And while you're working with the DP, you're also working with actors, producers, designers, all those people.
Absolutely.
Once you get into post, you're in a little dark room with an editor,
Yep.
day after day, smelling of body odor, eating old Chinese food.
Yeah.
And you better get along with that.
It's true. It's so true because you're having so much time with him. Yeah, she was hiking in Griffith Park, had continued on the hike while her walking companion had turned back. She was walking with her dog in Bronson Canyon, and then she fell and she died.
Yeah.
Wow.
Horrible story.
Damn.
Yeah.
How must that companion feel? I told you to go back. Yeah, it's a shame. Yeah.
And I know when it happened that Quentin Tarantino made a comment. I don't know what his quote was.
Right.
But essentially, like, he lost half his brain. You know.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Her last thing was Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah.
Right? So, but this is very important to understand and respect. Like, 'cause when we talk about these films, so much is involved. It isn't just, of course, we focus on the director, we focus on the actors, but so much is involved here, with the score, with the editors, with the producers, trying to get everything lined up, locations. Like, there's so much that's involved. It doesn't get talked about enough, but that's just the way it is, but like we want to, on this podcast, definitely give time to all those things. You've said that it's like a mission statement at the beginning of every podcast that we do for this, and I enjoy that, because it has to be respected.
And we're always going to miss things.
Yeah.
Because there's so many people that it could be there's just a PA that picks up a piece, like, hey, what about these shoes?
Right.
And suddenly that makes a difference in the film.
Continuity.
It's continuity
Yeah.
from Scripty, from your script supervisor. Little thing like Lawrence Bender goes on to be just a great producer.
Yeah.
Another one. Let's talk about just for a moment. This really is Tarantino. Is movie's got no score.
Yeah.
It's all songs.
It's all songs.
And I put Tarantino up with Martin Scorsese with the ability to pick songs for a film.
I agree with that.
He's got a great record player. Man.
Yes.
He is really good.
He introduces you to artists and music that you probably had. There was a lot of 70s songs in here I'd never heard before, and I grew up during that time and listened to a bunch of 70s music.
Yeah, but he just picks and once you hear that song, it becomes iconic to the film.
Yep.
Obviously, Stuck in the Middle is that scene. So now we're cutting off the year.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why I came here tonight. I got the feeling that something ain't right. I'm so scared in case I fall off my chair, and I'm wondering how I'll get down the stairs. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
So we've got a cop tied up.
Yeah.
We've introduced the idea that Michael Madsen's character might be a bit of a psychopath.
Yes.
Although he seemed fairly reasonable in other scenes.
Well, that's what psychopaths are.
Yeah, apparently.
They're not walking around just slicing people's necks.
So, and now he's alone. Mr. Orange is unconscious because of loss of blood.
Yeah.
With the cop, and this torture scene. So people have rated this among the most violent scenes in all of film.
I would absolutely agree. And but you don't see it.
It's off.
Is that what you? I'm sorry, Steve. I didn't mean to cut you.
No.
Yeah,
That's great. No, that
Yes.
was a perfect. You spiked my set. That was just right. Yeah, it's off camera.
Off camera.
In fact, you see very little violence actually happening.
Yep.
And I think this is one of the key things that filmmakers miss, and particularly Hollywood misses, is that people think they saw that moment.
Yes.
And the reason is that what we create in our minds is way more powerful
Yeah.
than what we see. When you see it, you're done.
Yep.
When you imagine it, it's terrifying.
Well, this is why I don't necessarily 100% love horror films. I think horror films that show too much, and the good ones, the ones I do love, don't. And it's because the real horror is always in your mind. Right. What you can imagine is happening is almost so much more worse than what you actually see happening. Right. Because then you have an actual parameter. You have actual parameters set up for you to visually see what's happening. Whereas what I love about Tarantino does is he just very deftly and subtly just moves the camera to the left. Right. And so that you don't see what's happening. And then when you come back, you see the blood and him holding the ear and talking into it to make fun of him and stuff.
It's brutal.
Which which
Well,
is
and
very
it's interesting. So there's two kinds of camera moves. One is called a motivated camera move, and there's unmotivated. So motivated is I'm walking and the camera moves with me.
Yeah.
Or even if I turn quickly to the right and the camera looks to see what I looked at, that would be motivated by my turn.
Okay.
The move off of the head is an unmotivated camera move.
Yes.
Which means you are aware. This is, remember I said that we are aware of Quentin Tarantino as the filmmaker.
Yeah.
That is you are aware. The camera turned.
Yeah.
Going back to the idea of things that you don't see, this is one of the reasons it'll be a movie that I'm sure will come up over and over again. Why Spielberg is lucky that the shark didn't work.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because the more you see that shark, the less scary it becomes.
Right.
And as a person who's done 2 great white shark documentaries, is that, and people have this unbelievably high fear of sharks.
Yes.
Even though they are, they're so not a threat to humans in any way. I mean, like there are averages about 18 people killed by sharks a year on the planet.
I love you to death.
Yeah.
I'm never going to agree with you, but go ahead.
Well, you mathematically you'll have to agree. There are 800 people a year killed by hippos.
Hippos?
Yeah, there's over 1,000 people a year killed by elephants.
Right.
Dogs kill lots of people. 10,000 people killed by bees because people are allergic to bee stings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there are hundreds and hundreds of people that slip and fall in their bathtub and die.
It's true.
Like sharks are so far down the list, it is below getting killed by lightning.
Wow.
That's how unlikely it is. And yet, because they are under the surface and we do not see them,
Yes.
we imagine this thing, and
Yeah.
that is what's terrifying. And it is imagining the violence in this film that is
Yeah.
what's really scary.
Yeah.
And that the emotion of the actor
Right.
is so palpable. And the sound is really works on your emotion.
The sounds of the gunshots are so loud, you can actually hear the cannon slamming into the gun as the bullet is coming out, and that's what is so powerful about those moments. The violence is only at the end, right at the end, and then in the scene where the woman gets shot by Tim Roth.
Oh, that's rough.
Who was his dialect coach on the film?
Oh, really?
Yes, and apparently Tim Roth talked her into playing that part because she was very hard on him. On getting his dialect right, so he wanted to shoot her as a way of kind of his little fantasy of it. So it's fascinating.
That's a brutal moment too, because you know that Tim Roth is the cop.
Yes.
And he ends up killing an innocent person
by instinct because he gets shot first.
Yeah.
But he does it, and instead of in that moment, And
it's wonderful performance on his part because you see him shoot it,
Yes.
and then you see the look on his face of going, "Oh my God, what have I done?"
Yep.
And then you go back to the scene. Now we return to him in the back of the car with Mantel and him saying, "I'm sorry." And that suddenly, now you know he's a cop when you saw it before.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't know. And so now the scene is transformed by everything that we've been through.
Yeah.
One more thing we had to go back to with Michael Madsen, whose dance and performance in this sequence is terrifying and weird and funny.
Through the whole film.
Creepy.
Man.
And there's this moment, so he cuts the guy's ear off, but he's not done.
No.
He gets up, he walks out of the warehouse, and we have this wonderful sound transition where the music...
Yeah, the music goes...
Because this is source music. The music goes down because it's actually playing, and we go out into this neighborhood.
Yes.
And we hear LA neighborhood stuff. And he quietly goes, it's all in one shot, into the trunk of the car, pulls out the gas can, walks back in, opens the door, there's the music again. We're back in this horrible, painful torture environment, and begins... while still dancing and having a good time, pouring gasoline on this guy.
Yeah.
He's going to light on fire.
Yeah.
Until out of nowhere, and one of the most shocking just moments, he's killed by Mr. Orange.
And once again, the sound of the gun.
Powerful sound of the gun.
It's so, absolutely. And it wreaks justice. It brings its justice to him, And it's one of those moments that he almost makes up for what he had done by killing that woman.
Right.
Because when he's in the car and he's got the gunshot and he's totally outing himself because he is legitimately afraid as a human being that he's going to die from this gunshot. So he's like, just roll up to a hospital and drop me off. He is trying every tactic possible to save his life while not 100% revealing that he's a cop, even though he is like coming right up to the edge in numerous moments.
And at this point now, Michael Madsen's dead.
Yeah.
And we've got what I think is perfect split loyalty.
Yeah.
This is what the expression it's something I've always thought about is trying to fork your characters, which is the chess term, is that both directions are bad.
Yes.
There is no good direction, and that Tarantino has now forked the audience.
Yeah.
Because And what's interesting, and I think he said this or Bender said this in the commentary track, is in this movie, the heroes, the bad guys are the heroes.
Yeah.
And the betrayer is the good guy.
Yeah.
And so we have this. We really like Harvey Keitel.
Yes, we do.
We really like Mr. Pink.
Mm-hmm.
And now that the only truly good character, pure character, the cop, is dead.
Yes.
And the truly bad character, Michael Madsen, is dead.
Yeah.
We're left with all these people that we like, and we see, how are we going to resolve this?
Right.
How can we get out? Is Mr. Orange going to live? Is Harvey, how is he going to get out? And the answer, of course, is they're not.
Yeah, they're not.
This is a Shakespearean tragedy now.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is no exit for these characters.
Except
Mr. Pink.
It's a double. Yeah, he does. He survives at
With
the end.
the diamonds.
Yeah, with the diamonds. He
did really well.
I've always wanted to see a sequel to this. I've always thought that somewhere at some point he could, but it's
I really
too far
hope
now.
it's just Mr. Pink sitting on a beach, a la Trading Places at the end, and that's it.
Feeling good, Lewis.
Looking good. That's kind of where I hope he ends up.
Well, there were
Although he's very pale skinned, so I worry about.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. He would lobster it up. But the rumors were that he was going to do a sequel of sorts after this movie, because after Pulp Fiction, because he had established Vic Vega and Vincent Vega,
Right, they're
and had
brothers.
killed them both off in their separate films, and was going to do the beginnings of them. But they had gotten too old by the time he wrote the script and couldn't get it done in time. And there's no way you're recasting those two guys. Just I don't know why you'd bother. They're just so great at playing those particular. And this was also great about Quentin Tarantino's films. Like they can be interrelated. The prostitute that Harvey Keitel is talking about, named Alabama, is Alabama Worley from True Romance.
Oh,
Yeah, these are all connected. Vince Vega is connected to Vic Vega. There's all this stuff that stretches out in those first three films of his that connect, and it's great to see that. And I think there are allusions to a couple of people in Kill Bill even. And so there are things that occur within these worlds that he creates that as you're walking into it, you really enjoy seeing how interconnected this stuff can actually be. And it's a small little like nerd kick that you get out of it.
And again, because Tarantino's a guy who wants you to know you're watching a movie.
Exactly.
It's not ruining anything.
Yeah.
We're not going, hey, wait a minute, why is this? You enjoy the fact.
Yeah.
And Tarantino is a director, and he's always interesting whenever you hear him interviewed.
Yes.
But he must do something right, because he has an ability to get great performances out of actors who maybe aren't so great elsewhere.
Yeah. Afterwards or before.
Yeah. He finds a thing, Michael Madsen being I like Michael Madsen a
You're
lot,
right.
but he's a strange actor.
Yep.
And he is off the charts good in this movie.
Yes, he is.
In a way he never is again.
This and Kill Bill, Volume 2, I think he's great. And that's whenever he works with Tarantino, he brings out the best in him. It's a great point you make, Steve. Because other than that, his career is full of a bunch of B movies and then occasional spurts in smaller parts, like in The Natural, where he plays Bump Bailey, and
Which he's good in. I love.
Yeah,
it's
good.
one of my favorite movies. That's
Yes.
another. We will. So coming soon at some point. Maybe we'll do The Natural.
Absolutely, I would love to do The Natural.
movie.
But those things, and you're right. Like Travolta is never better than he is in this film.
Oh, yeah.
And to reach all the way back to something you brought up at the beginning about the usage of the N-word, Sam Jackson legitimizes Quentin Tarantino in the black community. He legitimizes him because he is the one character the one actor that is in just about every one of his films after a certain point, and the usage of the N-word, he has come out in numerous interviews and defended Quentin Tarantino and for using the word and for use. So I find this very interesting because I think Sam is a fantastic actor who is never better than he is with Tarantino in Tarantino films, which is what you were saying. He takes these great actors, and Sam's a good actor, great actor.
Oh yeah,
but he's good. As Nick Fury's fine, but I think what Tarantino really does well is he gives actors that can step up to the plate material to show you the depths of their talent and their abilities.
Well, and I think if Sam Jackson's legitimizes Tarantino, it goes the other way.
Yes.
Because Tarantino makes Samuel Jackson.
Yes.
He has this unbelievable turn in Jungle Fever,
Yes.
right? Where he's fantastic.
Yep.
But still, he's not a big actor.
No.
And then through Tarantino, it's like he explodes. By the way, do you know what his gig was before, like to make money as an actor early?
No.
This is one of the greatest things ever, is that he was Bill Cosby's stand-in for The Cosby Show.
What?
Yeah. So he put on the sweaters. And there's a whole other Cosby family, and they would come out on the set, for lighting and for setups. Well, and I was about to say, Bill
man.
Cosby is off doing other stuff.
Yeah. Allegedly. We don't want to get sued.
That's a rough one.
Yeah.
Let's move on from that.
Yes.
But yeah, that's one of his first gigs. Seeing alternate Bill Cosby.
I wish someone had photos of that.
I'm sure there are some.
There have to be. There have to be. Now more than ever, they should be released.
So back to Reservoir.
Yes.
Bill Cosby can distract my brain a little bit.
Yeah, well, all
rough.
of us. Yeah.
This really shows why. You look at that moment. Here's the question I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
What effect does Tarantino, the arrival of Reservoir Dogs, have on the film world?
Well, I can speak for me personally, and then probably the film world, because I think for me it's all interconnected. To me, it reawakened a desire to know more, to learn more, to explore what was going on. I'm 21, 22 when this film comes out,
right.
And I don't care about aging myself. I'm a young soul. And when this film comes out, all of a sudden, I went to see it 4 or 5 times in the theaters, and then I rented the VHS numerous times. I had viewings at my house of people who were fellow Cine-Files to see it for the first time. Like, I did everything possible. It just made me so excited about film, and I think this was a response. I think we said this in the Raiders of the Lost Ark podcast. It was a response to the tentpole blockbuster films that were starting to become standard fare for the studios, and it kind of awoke this idea of writing stuff, of smaller films being noticed, and it built Miramax. Like, it's one of those founding pieces of the foundation that built Miramax. Because I think without Tarantino, I don't think Miramax is what it is. There's no way.
Absolutely.
Because there are so many filmmakers that have come into the Miramax world and have not stayed consistent
he was
in
the
their
juggernaut.
productivity. Yeah.
I think so. It's hugely influential just in terms of content.
Yeah.
Right after suddenly we get all these movies with a lot of violence,
that as well.
and
Yeah.
a lot of fast talking, swearing people.
Yes.
That are not as good as this.
Nope.
Who don't understand to do it, as always, and I'll say this, I'm sure many times, that Hollywood's tendency is to imitate the surface and not understand what's going on underneath. Right. So that happens. It kind of fizzles out fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Because people can't do what Tarantino's doing.
Right.
And then the other thing is, this is what creates Sundance.
Yes.
Sundance is a film festival, been around for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But Sundance as the place to discover young talent, which it really was for the next 15 to 20 years after this film. It's less so now.
Yeah.
Sundance is it's become so big that it isn't what it was.
Right.
But for that time, Sundance was the place that Hollywood went to discover young filmmakers, and that really starts with Tarantino and Rob Rodriguez and Steven Soderbergh.
Agree. And then you lead into Kevin Smith and Allison Anders and a bunch of these other filmmakers that really kind of made their name doing these other films, and getting the opportunity to do these films because there was a public for these films, and there was a public for these films because of Tarantino and Soderbergh and who you mentioned earlier as well. Yeah. Coming in at that time, so it has such a lasting effect throughout the entire, and Pulp Fiction solidifies it.
Absolutely.
Reservoir Dogs begins it, Pulp Fiction solidifies it.
Because Pulp Fiction is in fact monster hit.
Yeah.
Reservoir Dogs does great. It makes $20 million or something, which for a movie made under $1 million,
it's great.
It's not chump change.
Right.
But Reservoir Dogs is a huge hit.
Pulp Fiction, yeah.
And I think it's that moment in time, and we're in a similar moment, I think, now, which is there are moments where Hollywood has ceased to serve the needs of the people. This is in the late 60s, the studio system is falling apart, and you get the emergence of the 70s filmmakers in response to that moment. Yeah. And then that gets, in the 80s, the studios have come back in their new way with big tentpole movies, and this is a response to that. Yeah. And then today we're in a similar moment in time where it's okay with the internet and with YouTube and with the rise of all these channels on TV, suddenly things are challenging the norms. Yeah. And, because generally the really groundbreaking stuff, you cannot depend upon the studio to make it. Yeah. Their budgets are too high, the risks are too high, corporate culture is too complex, they're not going to do it. Yeah. but Netflix can do it.
Yeah.
You know, or YouTube can do it.
Yeah.
You know, different places can do it.
Well, and you see that with the blockbuster. You're not going to find these amazingly well-written scenes in blockbusters. It just doesn't happen. They've got to get to the next explosion, the next action scene, the next stuff. I mean, I'm not saying they're not well-written in terms of like servicing the needs of the film. I'm saying you're not going to find the kind of dialogue that you would find, for example, at the beginning of Inglourious Bastards between Christoph Waltz and that gentleman who's hiding Melanie Laurent in his basement. Those scenes, my God, those you're not going to find
Well,
those.
and they don't survive the notes.
Yes,
You know,
true,
like
that's true.
to the scene we talked about with the use of the N-word, which was very upsetting for me watching this time. It really threw me out.
I'm getting that sense. Yes.
Yeah, but you can't get that. That scene doesn't exist in a movie which is run by a studio, run by a corporation.
Right.
You
Exactly.
can't- That has
Well,
product placements and
yeah. Well, what about Hateful Eight? I mean, the N-word is used pretty liberally in Hateful Eight. That didn't bother you? Kurt Russell uses it. Goggins definitely uses it. Bruce Dern uses it.
It
and
does-
Samuel Jackson uses it quite a lot.
It does bother me. It does bother me.
Okay.
I mean, but it's you know.
And that's okay. I'm not asking.
We're in a. This is obviously topic for other. We're going to get into other films and deal with these issues.
Sure.
These are complicated issues.
Do the Right Thing is probably the film to discuss.
That's the
this
one I
with,
want.
yeah.
I want to do that one.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
Yeah, just that if you haven't seen this movie, please do yourself a huge favor and watch it. Watch it in any form that it comes in. The Blu-ray is real cheap. It shouldn't cost you anything to get the Blu-ray. But there's so much to discover about the film. The soundtrack is fantastic. The dialogue is amazing. And you're catching these actors at their hungriest.
Absolutely.
Including Keitel. This was a rebirth of Keitel,
Right.
who had been great in the 70s and early 80s films. Right. So it was an appreciation of him. And like Steve said earlier, a lot of these actors give their best performances working with Tarantino, and you really savor this film. And the double Mexican standoff at the end is worth it. It's just such a fantastic thing to watch, and it's so surprising when it happens. And then the irony of who survives. It's just so ironic that the whiny, crying one that bitches the most is the one that survives. I think it was brilliant.
Well, because there is nothing predictable that happens in this movie.
Yes.
You cannot know where this movie is going to go, and it's really the sign of, you know, I'm not sure if there are lessons for filmmakers in here.
Absolutely.
But one of the first lessons is try to be a genius. You know, because this is really a film to me made by just a brilliant person who is completely unique. He's his own guy.
Would you say, one last thing, would you say that it's akin to what Wells did with Citizen Kane, like as a right off the bat to create a film like this? It's not necessarily a masterpiece, but it certainly is one of the most amazing debuts by a filmmaker ever.
I think it's in the top 10 debuts.
Okay.
I don't think, I mean, you know, I know you love Citizen Kane. And I don't.
We're going to talk about that later.
That movie is here's where I think it's similar, is that what's always interesting to me about these kinds of films is that, surprisingly enough, the most interesting elements of them are actually not imitated.
Yes.
You know, and you look at Kane, it's not like everybody came out and made movies like Citizen Kane.
Right.
They learned lots of stuff from it. And the same is true of Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah.
It is its own unique thing. Mm-hmm. There isn't anything like it.
Yeah.
So I found my quote of craft.
Oh, yes, great.
Versus art.
All right.
So the quote, and this is from, as I said, Ed Catmull, the founder of Pixar. Mm-hmm. And the quote is, "Craft is what we are expected to know. Art is the unexpected use of our craft."
Oh, that's great.
Isn't that good?
That is fantastic.
It was worth me
It really
tooling
was.
around on my iPad.
You don't need to edit now.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah. There's still a little bumbling part earlier, but there will always be a bumbling part. It's going to happen.
That's what podcasts are for.
All right, so that's it for this episode of the Cine-Files. John, where can they find you?
Oh, yeah. You guys can always follow me at The Rocha Says, ROCHA, on Twitter and Instagram. You can see all the shows that I'm hosting, all the shows that I'm guesting on, and any of the work that I do as a voiceover artist or as a commercial and theatrical actor.
And you can find me at SR Morris on Twitter, and you can read my blog on politics and philosophy at acivilvoice.com if you're into that kind of thing.
Yes.
All right, that's it. We will see you next time where we take apart another classic film.